This podcast episode was originally recorded for the Healing Souls podcast and is being refurbished for your enjoyment.
Hello, everybody. This is Natasha Helfer, and this is the Healing Souls podcast. I am so excited to be back today. I am especially excited because my guest is not only a world-renowned, cool, awesome guy, but also a personal friend. So, hi, Christian. It's so nice to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for being with me.
Awesome to be here.
I'm going to read your bio a little bit so people can know why you're so awesome. So, Christian Moore is a licensed clinical social worker. He's an advocate for youth. He's an internationally renowned speaker. He's the author of a book that I highly recommend called The Resilience Breakthrough, 27 Tools for Turning Adversity into Action. He has created the Why Try program, which has been implemented in over 25,000 organizations. He specifically works with a lot of schools and other entities that are trying to help, underprivileged youth. So I am super excited to have you here, and we're going to talk not only about resilience in general, but I'm excited in particular to talk about resilience in the form of relationships, given that we are like a few days before election. Today is October 30th of 2020, and we've obviously had, a lot of, I think, just chaos in our country about political diversity and things of that nature. So, all right. Does that sound good? Is that a good place to start?
Great. Wow. That's a big subject. Right?
So, Christian, why don't you start out just by telling us a little bit about yourself? I mean, I know about your background. I know a little bit about how you grew up and kind of personal challenges maybe that you had to face and how you started maybe thinking about resilience from a personal perspective that then helped you put this all into place maybe for, kind of a larger systemic view. So is it okay for you to dive into just your story?
Yeah. It's interesting. People always ask me, what's the number one thing you have to be resilient? If you had to put it down to one word, resilience is the ability to bounce back. And so until suffering shows up, you don't have anything to bounce back from. And some of the challenges, some of the suffering I had, it often happens early in our lives. So take you a little bit of my personal journey. I grew up in between DC and Baltimore in the great state of Maryland. My dad was a code breaker for NSA, was a cryptanalyst, but was autistic. He was brilliant, but very, very intelligent. You could say to him 5,896 times 852, and he could instantly rattle that off the top of his head. And then my mom had something called social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. So there wasn't a lot of food to eat in my house growing up because of that. There's usually pickles, olives, and tuna fish, Natasha. So I'm going to write a cookbook one day, 101 ways how to eat those.
I love it.
So I had this mom who, again, was just dealing with intense anxiety, a dad who's autistic. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. And, I was illiterate when I was 17 years old, struggled with basic reading, writing skills. I came from a pretty orthodox religious family. I had 5 brothers, 6 sisters. And because of my parents' challenges, I was pretty much a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night. Not a lot of rules. Grew up, probably every child's dreams to have no rules. I experienced it. Now, we both know as mental health workers, if you have no rules, you're likely going to crash and crash hard. And so I had quite a few crashes growing up, but just, struggled, but was very lucky. I had these kids I was running around with. I'd run around with these older kids, and many of them were drug dealers and stuff, but they looked out for me. They're like, Christian, if you use drugs, we'll kill you. If anybody messes with you, we'll kill them. So I was like the safest child in America. I was a white kid. A lot of these older kids were African-American, friends and people just by geographic where I was living, and they looked out for me. They even nicknamed me Mighty Moore. I was the smallest one in the group. So your street, kind of nickname is the opposite of your persona. If you're really big, they call you Biggie, but I was really small. So they called me Mighty Moore. Luckily, and probably the only reason I'm talking to you right now, Natasha, is one of my best friend's moms, an African-American lady who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. I was good friends with her son. She sees me out there late at night. She knows what I'm out there doing. And she's like, look, you can't hang out with my son anymore. You can't keep running these streets. And she did an intervention. A long story short, she said, look, Christian, a couple of days later, if you'll start going to school every day, I want to see your report cards. If you start answering to me, you can come eat in our house anytime you want. And so it's kind of an informal foster care situation. So, being able to spend some of my childhood constantly in an African-American home had a huge impact on me and how I see the world. I'm sure it had a huge impact on me becoming a social worker. For example, she'd sit out in front of my school sometimes for an hour, 2 hours with a warm plate with, food wrapped in it and talk to me about my challenges at home in the neighborhood school. I remember her just saying to me, Christian, I can't get rid of the challenges, in this environment. You have every reason to be angry, to be frustrated, but you have to use that anger as a reason to turn in your homework, stay in school. Now I realize those were the first seeds of resilience that anybody planted in me. And because of Mama Jackson coming into my life and having a huge impact, we've been able to, now we're over, some of the work we're doing is over 30,000 schools. And 2 years ago, she got the National Rosa Parks Award. And so it's kind of come full circle from my crazy childhood to Mama Jackson getting the Rosa Parks Award. And I know I'm probably covering way mass distance here really quick, but when I talk about Mama Jackson, I got to kind of give you the whole story. I was the first one in my family to go to college, graduate from college. And it's because of her. I wouldn't have had that opportunity to do that, especially with learning disabilities. I was on a college campus with a 6th grade math level, 7th grade reading, writing level. People with learning disabilities, make up a high percentage of people on our welfare rolls, in our youth correction system, our adult prison system. So I started studying in college the impact that learning disabilities has on poverty and crime and different things. And when I started seeing those statistics of how the learning disabled impact those populations, that's the other thing that kind of got me interested in being a social worker. Then just my own life experience struggling academically, I got really interested in what role resilience, plays in that. And could resilience be an equalizer a little bit when we're dealing with all these different social challenges and social situations. And that kind of became my big picture interest a little bit.
I love that. And I mean, and we have so much research out there, especially for youth, that one person, one mentor, one significant adult can make it or break it for an adolescent, a teenager. And so your story about Mama Jackson is really pretty profound, that she was able to see you spend energies on you when she had her own children and her own family and her own system to take care of, and how impactful that can be to be a mentor. So I just throw that out there to remind everybody, if you're in a space where you can offer anything to one.
Amen. Absolutely.
Out there.
It makes a huge difference. I mean, there's a good chance I could have ended up in prison or, lots of different challenges in life. I still had challenges, but there's no way I would have had the opportunities I had if she hadn't taken risks. It's interesting. I was talking to her the other day, and I've never shared this, but I never had this perspective, is what I should say. But she was like, "Look, Christian, I was helping you during the '70s, the early '70s. So you see even the social challenges around race that we see in 2020 around these issues. She was intervening in the '70s with this white kid whose dad was my dad was kind of a high government official, but we lived in a kind of in a duplex in a poor neighborhood because of his autism. He had no money management skills. And so he made like $65,000 a year, which was a lot as a code breaker at the time, but he was in debt, sometimes over $1 million in debt. I was a very unique situation that I was in, with two parents with mental health issues, and then just being at the right place at the right time, where Mama Jackson was able to really intervene in some powerful ways. But she did it, I'm just starting to understand, under really difficult circumstances. And I didn't realize that now I'm a parent, I know how much food costs me. They were feeding me every day. And I had no sense. I'm embarrassed to say, at 50 years old, I'm really understanding, how much she really stuck her neck out. I've talked about Mama Jackson, of course, for years and my travel speaking, but I mean, it's not until even after COVID hit that I'm really putting this in perspective.
Wow. Yeah. The sacrifice that it took for her to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really significant. Charity comes in many different ways, and her story has always impacted me as well when I have listened to you talk about her. So, and challenging me, what am I doing? What am I doing in my life to, sacrifice at that level, of what that meant to her. All right. So moving on then, I would love to hear a little bit from you, even about your academic challenges, right? Because you're talking about learning disorders, which is something. Yeah. And I don't know if you have statistics off the top of your head. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay. But I don't right now as far as how many people deal with learning disorders, but it's fairly significant amount of people.
It's it's a lot higher than people realize, because we don't even really look at it or count it unless it impacts your social or occupational functioning. This kind of shouldn't surprise you. Everybody has somewhat of a learning disability. Somebody might be stronger at math or reading or different things. There's mild, moderate, and severe, learning differences. Again, more moderate to severe is where it starts impacting you socially or economically and stuff. And that population, again, is the majority of people who are filling up our youth correction system, our adult prison system. As high as 70% of youth in our youth correction system have a learning difference. Over 70% of people on TANF on public assistance do. Over 80% of the adult prison population. So I wrote a thesis on it, and I argued kind of my paper there that I could go into a third grade classroom and I could show you who's filling up these systems. We know where these populations are really, really early in life now, but it's like, it's like a pie, them being in prison, for example, 80% of the time, a piece of that pie is a learning difference, but it could be other things, economic issues. It can be discrimination. There's many, many different issues that lead for them to be incarcerated. It just happens to be about 80% of the time they have a learning disability. And so that's what kind of got my interest in it. My own academic experiences, I graduated from high school at 19 and a half, almost 20 years old. It took about 2 years before I went back to college, and I applied to about 22 years old, applied to the local community college. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to let me in. I don't know what 9 times 6 is. I don't know how to tell time on a hand clock. To me, a quarter to 5 equals 25 minutes to 5, but they tell me a quarter till is like 15. How could a quarter not be 25? I mean, just silly stuff like that. And so I'm thinking, I've told my whole life, my high school counselors told me college wasn't an option. I applied local community college and I get accepted. And I'm jumping up and down on the couch. And my wife, Wendy, she kind of laughing at me. She's like, Christian, it's open enrollment. They let everybody in. I'm like, what do you mean they let everybody in? I'm just like, so luckily the college I applied to was open enrollment. I didn't even know what that was or what that meant. And then when I was in school, my grandmother, I remember, put up like the $800 for tuition. And I didn't want to waste her $800. And another student in my class said, you get just as much credit with a D- as you do with an A+. I went and asked the professor and then the counselor of this class, is that true? You get just as much credit, right, with a D-? They're like, yeah, but no one does that. You won't be able to transfer. You won't be able to go to graduate school. Like, that was my big concern at the time. But so my goal was I didn't waste my grandmother's money, was to get a D-. So I did 3 things. I go to every class, I'd sit on the front row, and I would disrupt it every 30 seconds. And finally, the teacher would be like, I can't even teach. Would you please stop disrupting my class? Because in college, there's 200 students in some of these classes. And then, so, your GE classes. So as soon as they knew who I was, I would behave. I would, be good, because I had to get help from them. So I go to every class, annoy the professor. And when they know who I am, I chill out. Then I do all the homework assignments. And then I would do enough extra credit to get a D-. So if they said, okay, go write a 5-page paper, I'd write a 10-page paper, or if 10-page paper, write a 15-page paper, whatever. I would always do a little more work than the person helping me. And I noticed something, and a lot of kids don't know this in America's education system. If you do more work than the teacher or the professor, they will knock down 1 million doors for you. I just luckily grew up as a street kid. I was hustling. I was just trying to figure out, how to get through this, to get this D-. What was crazy, Natasha, if you do those 3 things, go to every class, sit on the front row, do all the homework assignments, and do enough extra credit to get a D-, you'll never get a D-. You'll get an A, B, or C. And I noticed I was failing almost every test I was taking, but I just figured out how to, because just as this formula. For example, we've taken literally thousands of kids across America, taught them this formula. They had all Fs, and have helped literally thousands and thousands of kids pass school because they know how to play the academic game. But, I was a first, generation college student. A lot of that information is passed down. Like, my kids to this day know how to get through almost any class. Now, where this doesn't work is math or foreign language. And one of the things that very few people understand, especially math gatekeeps millions of kids out of college, out of the opportunity. If we want to do something about economics in this country, if education is the way out of poverty, we have to start really looking at the barriers we set. And we live in a world that if you can do math, then you can access higher education. If you can't do math, try to access higher education. It's very, very difficult. But I don't know, it's politically incorrect to talk about, or I don't know why there's not people up in arms screaming about this. but they're just, in 20 years, I've never got anybody's attention. They're just like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess if you can't do math, you shouldn't be on a college campus anyhow. And we have millions of people who could perform at extremely high levels. I'm a social worker. I'm a therapist. I've never used math in the work I'm doing, but I still had to get through, college math to even have the opportunities to do what I do. It took me a couple of extra years because of that and all kinds of stuff. But what I'm saying is, this might be going on a tangent where I should be going here, but it's just something I'm passionate about. So I'm working on that too.
Christian, go for it.
Sorry.
No,
game plan.
I think that's a great point. I hadn't really thought of that before, and I think that's absolutely true. I've sat with adult learners in my practice who are crying because they can't maybe stay-at-home moms who are going back to school, haven't had a math book in 10 15 years, and are kind of stuck in this remedial math course that they can't quite get through, even though that's not really what they're there at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's something that we as a society, I'm telling you, it keeps a lot of people in poverty, and I'm going to start speaking out about it. So it's very frustrating. So, and I was one of those people myself. And so my NoF game plan would work in every class, but math or foreign language, I couldn't get through it because of that. And then I couldn't graduate because I couldn't do the math or foreign language. And I applied to a university, and I said to the university, people like me usually don't get these opportunities. People like me, we break into your homes, we break into your cars. Please let me into this university. And I kind of made I kind of argued that this makes no sense. We take the people who do the best academically, and we have them hang out with the other people who do the best academically. If I want to become a better basketball player, if I played basketball with Michael Jordan, I'd probably become a better basketball player. If I played golf with a professional golfer, I'd be a better golfer. But we do the opposite in our society. We take the people who struggle the most academically, and they spend the least amount of time with the people who do the best academically. One of the reasons I'm a little smarter is I get to hang out with people like Natasha. I get to talk, I get to have conversations with people who raised my game. And I said, if we really want to do something about poverty, why would we not take people who struggle academically and have them spend time with the people who do the best academically? I've had the opportunity to write a book, to be a commencement speaker in the School of Education at Johns Hopkins. Is because I got to spend, 8 years hanging out with some of the top PhDs in this country. You take that opportunity away from me, I'm not having this conversation right now. I'm not Christian Moore, the author of The Resilience Breakthrough. I'm not impacting millions of people, but I got to be mentored. Even though I had a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level, I got to be mentored by some of the top people in my profession of mental health, took me under their wing. And so I have a tremendous debt to pay with that level of investment in me. And so just one of the things that works me up a little bit. You got me fired up today, Natasha. I don't usually get this on a soapbox. I apologize. I'm usually more of a goofball, but I don't know what it is today. Maybe we're getting too close to the political, the politics, because people are always talking about welfare reform, poverty reform, economic reform, social justice. These are issues that we got to start looking at through a different lens.
Yes, right. No, I'm all with you. And I think this all actually I don't see it as a tangent. I see all of this as the conversation of resilience. And so when I think about, your approach to your academics and the risks that you were willing to take, and I'm not expecting you to go through your 27 tools on this podcast,
no.
What are some of the kind of bulleted points that kind of fit into your ideas about what resiliency is, and how did you start talking to some of these teenagers about that? I remember, some of your stories about going into a classroom and, as usual, teenagers are looking at you like, what the hell is this guy going to tell me, right? Or like, who's this guy trying to do anything in my life? He doesn't get me. He doesn't know what I'm going through. So how did you start kind of breaking through that kind of generational gap a little bit? And also and some of these kids that you were talking to were in juvenile hall or were already in prison or were the ones who were getting the Fs. What were you starting to talk to them about?
Yeah, well, first thing I had to do is figure out how to put it in a language that's relevant to them. So my organization, the Y Tri organization, we deliver everything through a multimedia delivery system. So the child visually sees it, they hear it in music, they physically do it. But the the main message I started realizing was when I spent 8 years in college, I spent $65,000 on my education, and it was basically in positive psychology. What we say to ourselves is going to lead to our actions. It's going to lead to our behaviors. So if you have opposition, if you have something that you have to bounce back from, you have to be resilient from, you probably want to tap into positive emotions. But what hit me early on in my career was, wait a minute, if you have opposition, if you have suffering, if you have pain, you're likely going to have negative emotions. I don't know about you, when life sucks, life's difficult, I feel sad, hurt, depressed, angry, anxiety, fear. And what started hitting me was, wait a minute. One, we demonize those emotions tremendously, which are as normal as breathing. If you have opposition, if you have difficulty, if you're dealing with relationship pains, family pain, your own emotional, the greatest war we fight is between our ears. So as soon as those negative emotions kick in, I just started wondering, wait a minute, could they be a fuel source? Could they actually be a resource to me? And again, it was lucky I had Mama Jackson. Now I look back, I'm sure Mama Jackson, she was passing that on from generations. Her great-great-grandparents were slaves. And so coming down, they had to channel opposition and negative emotions for years. I just happened to be from, the culture I was raised in was not to be vulnerable, to try to be perfect, to always make good decisions, to have a good thought. A good thought would probably come from God. A bad thought would come from the dark side. So, this is how I'm raised. And then now I'm a therapist and I'm working with kids and families in crisis. And I started realizing pretty quick, man, if I can't show them how to create a productive outcome with their negative emotion, we're not going to get that far in the change process. Like, they could think about this. You have twice the fuel to bounce back if you can access positive emotions and negative emotions. That's what kind of got my attention. And then I started realizing we could take children by third grade and we could teach them the minute they feel sad, angry, nervous, or fearful, nothing's wrong with them. They're literally experiencing the human condition. It's okay. I mean, we have something like between 40 to 60,000 thoughts every day, and 46,000 different thoughts and emotions every single day. And so if you think about the number of emotions, I mean, I can think right now, I've probably had, 30 different emotions, 50 different emotions just talking to you right now, these emotions kicking in. And so the ability to, one, recognize those emotions. That's, I think, why you're seeing this mindfulness movement just explode right now, because the ability to kind of sit still, notice your emotions, whether they're positive or negative, and then make productive decisions in your life, whether the emotion is positive or negative. What we're realizing in psychology is it's almost irrelevant if an emotion is positive or negative. It's what's the outcome of it. Now, I do want to say, though, if you have chronic, like I have chronic anxiety, I've been on medication for anxiety. If you have something chronic depression, anxiety, you need to meet with a therapist like myself or Natasha, and maybe get some medication and get support. So I want to be very clear that if it's something where you're hurting yourself or others, of course, you want to get help. But outside of that, we're starting to realize in psychology that you actually have twice the fuel to bounce back from if you can tap into both positive and negative emotions and create a productive outcome. A metaphor I use to answer your question, Natasha, when I'm talking to kids about this, to motivate kids and make this really clear to a child, is I use the metaphor of a car battery. And I'll say, can you charge this battery with just a positive connection? Of course, the kids will say no. Can you charge the battery with just a negative connection? No, we know that battery charges for that car because of the positive and the negative coming together. And so I guess my contribution to mental health was I normalized negative emotions. And it's interesting. I speak a couple of months ago, I was in Chicago speaking to over 300 therapists. These are top, mental health workers in Chicago, in the city there. And I was just teaching this concept of what to do with your negative emotions. And many of the mental health workers came up to me afterwards in tears and said, I didn't know I could do that much work with my negative emotions. I thought I had to do everything I could to extinguish those emotions. And I asked them, I said, in your 50 years on planet Earth, have you ever extinguished those emotions? No. But there's a lot of systems, organizations, people with agendas that will tell you something's wrong with you if you have negative emotions. And we have to stand up and fight that. That is not, one, it disrespects the human condition. What makes us human is the fact that we make mistakes, we feel sad, we feel hurt, we mess up. That's the most beautiful thing about ourselves. We would be like AI. We would just be like technology or the perfect machine or computer if we didn't mess up. It's really the birthplace of humanity is in our weaknesses, in our mess ups, and our things that the many people in the world would go, oh, those things aren't very strong. I mean, you're weak right now. Sometimes I think our weaknesses are our biggest strengths. You take someone like Christopher Reeves, who was paralyzed, who played Superman. He's this opposite of me, tall, dark, handsome, has all these abilities. And he gets thrown off this horse. He's paralyzed. And he literally wants to commit suicide. He's rock bottom. His wife negotiates with him, says, hey, just stay alive for the children. If you still feel like this in a few months, I'll be here for you. We'll relook at it. But let's see if we can make a difference in the paralysis community. He took anger, sadness, depression, and he just channeled that into his rehab, into what he was doing to make that comeback. And when I started studying his life, Oprah took being physically abused, sexually abused, and she felt rage, she felt anger, and she said, you know what, I'm going to change the world with this pain. I know enough about Natasha has done the same thing. Natasha said, man, I've dealt with stuff in my life. I'm going to use this to help the world heal. I mean, not Natasha, your story is a powerful story of doing this. And it's people like you, it's people who have the ability to say, hey, I've been through something, but I'm going to create more love, more healing on the back end of this. That's the second most powerful thing I've ever learned, is this ability to be resilient. And then, of course, love is the greatest principle that I've learned. But the second most powerful thing anybody's ever taught me is that I have a switch between my ears. I can flip it. When the suffering shows up, I can ask myself, how can I use this suffering as a reason to become a better human being or to try harder? That's a lot. That's a lot there. I apologize.
I love everything that you're saying. And, as I think about my experience as a clinician, and people are coming in, and every intake, right? Every first session with somebody, basically, I'm trying to hear their story, and I'm trying to understand, what do you want? Where are you wanting to go? Why are you here, willing to work with me? What are your goals, right? And so, and more than likely, when I say any version of, what are you hoping to attain here? They'll say something like, I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to have a happy marriage, right? It has usually the word happy in it. Yeah. And so I love when you talk about the complexities of feelings, because happiness, happy is one feeling. And like very well described, we have, bajillions of feelings every day. And I think that this really comes from cultural expectations that are completely unrealistic. And the first thing I'm really doing, at least in my style of therapeutic approach, is helping people have realistic expectations of what a good life can look like without needing to say, I'm happy.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a lot of feelings about the happiness language and the positive and using positive and negative around feelings, because it's interesting. As I speak on college campuses every year, some of the professors will pull me aside and say, hey, Christian, don't emphasize whether an emotion is positive or negative. And I always say, well, I'm working with kids. It's just an easy way for them to understand that. But with adults, we need to understand, and you started alluding to this, is they're just emotions. There's just this gamut of emotions. And there's not really such thing as a positive or negative emotion. So going back to happiness, for example, most things that I'm bouncing back from or overcoming, they're not tied to happiness. The joy I maybe feel, or I maybe feel better inside is that I overcame something, that I pushed through. Like, this morning when I woke up, I only got like 4 hours of sleep last night. I was dealing with a crisis yesterday with a friend. I woke up this morning, I'm like, man, I'm getting older. My beard here is getting more gray. My hairline's receding more. Natasha, I couldn't even find my neck this morning. But I said, because of that, I'm going to try to give a better speech today. I'm going to try to have a better interview with Natasha because of that. And so now happiness might be at the end of this interview, because I tried 100%, but to go through the experience, I might not be experiencing happiness. When I woke up this morning, I did not feel like getting out of bed. I didn't feel happy. I didn't have enough sleep. I was dealing with a friend with a crisis, all these things. But I've learned at 50 years old, there is something better than happiness. And that is that I pushed through that opposition, and I might still be dealing with sadness. My anxiety still may be high, but I'm in the fight still. And that is an empowerment. So sometimes I feel like that empowerment feeling to me is a better feeling than happiness. My whole life, I thought happiness is everything, but feeling empowered, if my spouse left me and I have the ability to make a comeback from that, to feel empowered is if I lose my job and I'm able to go find that other job. Maybe I have to apply for 30 jobs before I find that job. The empowerment of that is bigger than any rush I've ever had experiencing happiness. And usually happiness is fleeting. It's there with me because almost all emotions are fleeting constantly. And, and this is the powerfulness of mindfulness, is the ability to sit and watch those emotions kind of come and go. Because we know they're just certainly, whether the emotion is happiness or sadness. I tell myself, or even I struggle with anxiety. I know my anxiety is going to be temporary. And I say to myself, pretty much any emotion I'm having right now, it is not going to last, which is not. And so that's another thing that helps me push through that a little bit.
Yeah, no, I love that. And for me, I generally use words like, is a more helpful word rather than happiness. I do talk about resilience being a good word. Yeah. I talk about satisfaction, like general satisfaction, general contentment. I like the word general.
Yeah. I like that.
So that when you're going through all those fleeting things, which can happen on any given day, you can step back and go, okay, so overall though, where am I at and what's this experience like for me? And you're going to have chapters in life that you're not even going to feel generally satisfied, right, with some of the challenges that you're discussing. But I think getting away from this kind of cultural, very very interwoven cultural message that we should always be happy. And we're very, I think here in the United States, and maybe part of that has to do with puritanical Christianity that we were founded on or whatever, but it really is kind of, you're supposed to earn your worth, your happiness. And so we're constantly hustling for things that then we feel disappointed at. And then oftentimes that message goes back to somehow there's something wrong with us. And that can really, that kind of thinking, I think, can break down resilience instead of building it. So I love your reframes. I love your reframes that these negative, maybe what we consider negative experiences are part of contentment and satisfaction.
Yeah.
Because it gives us that opportunity to fight and to empower ourselves and to challenge, and that's actually, the hustle isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No. And what makes humans so amazing is, first, we're already resilient. I mean, if you don't think you're resilient, just think about your ability to adapt to so many things. We know change is the most constant thing, and humans just adapt. And it's funny, so many things I look back at, I just adapt to in dysfunctional ways. It's just, I grew up in a home where both my parents had pretty intense mental health issues. So as an adult, I'll stay in relationships, I'll stay around people that could be emotionally abusing me or different things because I have crazy tolerance. Does that make sense? Because I was around so much dysfunction in my childhood that now at 50 and becoming a therapist, I have to really step back and go, all right, Christian, you don't just have to accept things. It's funny, like there's a very personal example, but I have all the ability to go to the dentist, right? So my wife recently said, Christian, just go to the dentist. I said, that tooth is hurting. But I can go 2 years without going to the dentist because of my ability to adapt. Here's another example. Like, we live in this house, there's 4 of us living in this house, and we've had 1 water heater, and it finally went out on us this past week. And now we have 2 water heaters, so everybody can take these warm showers. But we just adapted to having all these waits in between. My wife grew up really poor, grew up in this little duplex. And so we're just laughing at our ability to just adapt to anything, whether there's food in the house, whether you have to take a cold shower. And, now I have these 2 water heaters. I'm like, what? I could have bought a second water heater anytime in the last 20 years. It's just that I was almost more comfortable in the not being comfortable. It's just, and I look back at that, or why don't I go to the dentist? Or I have all the ability to go have my teeth fixed. And I hope I'm not being too vulnerable sharing this, and by the way, you need to be vulnerable to be resilient, because the only way you connect with another human being in a deeper way is to be vulnerable. With no vulnerability, we cannot get close to each other. A little side note here, as I'm telling you about my inappropriate dental issues, but I'm fighting with going to the dentist because I'm almost too resilient. I have this ability to adapt, but also part of being resilient is we do got to take care of ourselves. And we have to be selfish sometimes to be resilient. I have to say, hey, I got to take care of my physical health, my mental health, so that I can help other people. I can help my kids. I can do different things. But you see, during COVID, our ability to adapt has been tremendous. Now, let me be really clear. If you get to the point where you don't feel like you can adapt, that's when you need to talk to a counselor. You need to, connect with someone for some support. I've had to connect to other people for support more than any time in my life. But just having this time to go through COVID is I'm starting to see, man, these are all these places that I'm maladaptive, where I have problems where when I was a workaholic and I traveled 7 million miles across this planet. I'm going 100 miles an hour across this planet. And so that was a way maybe to cover up some of my dysfunction. Does that make sense, being a workaholic? But now everything slows down. I'm like, wait a minute, man, why am I not taking care of my teeth? Why did I make sure my family had warm water? And all these things, just silly stuff. But these silly things are big things, and we have to increase our resilience, I think, also by taking care of those little things as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was probably a weird conversation there, but that's important to resilience. I'm telling you, to be resilient, those things are big.
All right. So just to recap, before we start talking about relational resilience, some of the things that you're saying is obviously love and having a mentor and having people in your life. That's definitely an ingredient towards having good resilience. You're saying, framing your negative emotions, whatever we want to call them, those I guess those emotions that have been classified as negative. How about that? Those emotions have been classified as negative, and realizing that that's half of your fuel towards resilience, right?
And you have double the fuel if you can tap into both. That's the important thing. If you tap into positive and negative, I don't want to minimize the importance of positive emotions. I believe in positive psychology. Sometimes people at conferences will go, hey, Christian's being kind of hard on positive psychology. And I always want to yell, no, I love positive psychology. I just believe it's 50% of the equation. The other 50% of the equation is using the negative emotions as your best friend, right?
Right. Yeah, no, good. And then maybe another one that I picked up on and what you're saying is showing up, kind of like what you said with class and stuff. You got to show up. You got to like out there and, be willing to try something. And I love the name of your company, it's like, why try? So anything else that you'd like to just kind of talk about as far as basic bullet points, as far as defining how you look at resilience?
Yeah. Well, the next thing I'll just give you there's 4 bullet points as relates to this. I want to just outline really quick is, so when you've decided to channel both your positive and negative emotions, that's great. But where is the motivation going to come from to do that? And I had read lots of books on resilience, and they had taught me about the attributes of resilience, hard work, determination, perseverance. But I wanted to know, where does resilience come from internally? So I want to make sure the listener hears these 4 things real quick, and this is the kind of nutshell of my book here, because we looked at tons of people who had high trauma and were bouncing back. Most of my career, me and Natasha, oftentimes we'll work with people who have high trauma, who are hurting themselves and others. But I was doing work from inner city Detroit to Baltimore, Chicago, all across this country. And I knew there was a population who had tremendous trauma. Their mom's in prison, their dad's an alcoholic, they had dealt with violence and abuse. And I would meet these kids, and kids are very resilient. And this kid would have like a full ride scholarship to Georgetown or something. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm a social worker. When you have your level of trauma, you should not be able to do what you just did. And so I started studying those populations, and we kept seeing 4 things pop up over and over again with high trauma and thriving. And when we say they're thriving, they're not hurting themselves or others. They're being productive. That's all we're measuring. Are they being productive in the reality of where they're standing? And the first thing we saw pop up was something called relational resilience, where you go through the motions, you don't give up because another person needs you, you need them. For example, my 2 kids, Cooper and Carson, if I never got invited to speak again, I would go work at 4 different fast food restaurants because they need me, I need them. That makes me relationally resilient. And there's a huge amount of research around relational resilience. We've seen this during COVID, just the numbers of suicide, depression, all these things going up as we've been socially isolated. Human beings are not meant to social distance. They are meant to come together. So there's a tremendous amount of research around that. So the first place that resilience comes from internally is this relational resilience. And then the second place it comes from is something called street resilience, where you use any type of disrespect or past mistake or social injustice is a reason to push forward. For example, I was told I couldn't go to college because of my learning differences. I had a professor that came to me in college and said, Christian, if you can get a college degree, my degree is worth less. Because he's pretty much saying, look, you don't know how to tell time on a hand clock. You don't even know what 9 times 6 is. And we let you in this MSW program. My PhD is worth less because you're that big of a loser. I walked home crying, sobbing off that college campus. Now, this year, that professor's teaching out of 2 college textbooks. My theories are in both these textbooks. I was talking to you about resilience and my Y Tribe program. We're in an evidence-based program for something called RTI, PBI. Anyways, so we're in the textbooks now. So he actually has to lecture on my theories. Now, you can say, Christian, you're being a little arrogant right now. You're being cocky. I would say, no, I'm not. I'm being street resilient. You told me I'm not even good enough to be on this college campus. Now I am, and I'm in the damn textbook. I'm just saying, sorry. What I'm saying is that's street resilience. Does that make sense? You told me I'm not even good enough to be here, but I'm going to use that rejection, that hate. And so human beings will just respect each other over height, weight, shoe size, skin color, belief system, culture, background. You see America divided right now so much. Because our street resilience is just human beings love to put down another human being. We don't know why that quite is, but because it makes us feel better, whatever that is. But there's no shortage of haters and disrespecters out there. You have a massive resilient advantage if you can use other people's disrespect or putting you down as a reason to become greater. And we see this with so many, Michael Jordan getting cut from the basketball team, Rosa Parks being asked to sit at the back of the bus. That's street resilience. When you say when Nelson Mandela in the prison camp for 27 years and he, brings reconciliation into South Africa, to use hate, to use disrespect as a reason to become greater. That was the basis of the civil rights movement. Dr. King understood if they come at us with the fire hoses, with hate, disrespect, we're going to try to come back with love, with forgiveness, with nonviolence. And that's what changes the world. That's street resilience. And so that's the second place resilience comes from within. And then the third place is resource resilience. Go ahead.
And it can have a hint of cockiness in it. I think.
It's added. That's why we call it street. That's the street. No, I appreciate you pointing that out, Natasha, because let me tell you, it offends some people. But in this,
they're like, "Oh yes, I did." It's
yes.
healthy.
And that's the street. And there's a difference between arrogance and cockiness. Now, if I didn't use it to serve other people, does that make sense? I use it to make sure other people heal. I try to give back. You have to pull other people out. When you've been able to overcome a few things, you got to reach back behind you. I'm from Maryland. Maryland's the crab state. There's a metaphor of a bunch of crabs inside of a pot. If you put a bunch of crabs in a pot and you don't put a lid on the pot, the crabs can't get out of the pot because the other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. You got to make sure you're the crab reaching back and pulling them, throwing them out of the pot with you. And that's what we have to start doing in this great country. We have to help keep pulling each other out of that pot and do that service. And then the third place resilience comes from is that resource resilience. And that's where you maximize your talents, your abilities, people, assets, the resources around you. Nobody can be resilient in a vacuum. That's what I was saying to you earlier, like I got to take better care of myself. It's okay. Even though I grew up how I grew up, I felt guilty having 2 water heaters, like literal guilt over 2 water heaters. I needed to work through that guilt that I have the economic resources to have my teeth fixed, but I don't do it. Does that mean, see, that's resource resilience. I'm hurting my resilience when I'm not doing those things. Does that make sense? When I'm not taking care of myself, that I'm hurting my own personal resilience. And that's what's so important with resource resilience is to maximize those resources that we have. Like, I had 2 skills growing up. They sent me to the principal's office every 5 minutes for what? Speaking nonstop. Today, I'm paid to speak nonstop. This is the greatest country in the world. And so that's resource resilience, just maximizing the reality of your personality traits, what's unique about you. Now, a lot of people will say, when's he going to stop talking? Does that make sense? Well, I'm not going to stop talking because I use talking to help heal myself, to heal other people. I was born a talker. I'm going to die a talker. Resource resilience. And then the last place resilience comes from is something called rock bottom resilience. And I'm telling you, one of the greatest therapists I know in this country that understands rock bottom resilience, I should shut up right now and have you talk, Natasha, because you understand the human condition and what it really is to pull someone out of a rock bottom situation. But I know you would say, Natasha, all of us have our own personal rock bottom. We're all dealing with rock bottom in our own personal continuum, where we are. And rock bottom resilience is the ability to say to yourself, how do I use this suffering? How do I use this pain as a reason to just put one foot in front of another and kind of start where I stand and give myself grace. And, usually grace is something that comes outside of ourselves. I end my book, The Resilience Breakthrough, with something called self-grace. We have to give ourselves grace first. If we give ourselves grace first, I promise you the grace you get from outside of yourself, wherever your belief system is, however you're accessing hope, you're going to continue to access it longer if you forgive yourself first. But the kryptonite of resilience is if you cannot forgive yourself first, and your head hits the pillow at night and you don't forgive yourself and you're beating yourself up, it's almost impossible to want to fight back that next day to be resilient. So we have to give ourselves forgiveness. We got to give ourselves grace. To mess up, to make mistakes is just part of the human condition. And it's what's most special about you. Because if you didn't mess up, you didn't make mistakes, again, you would be artificial intelligence. You would not be human. The beauty in being human is our weaknesses, trust me. And so we have to be able to give ourselves that grace in our imperfections. And that's one of the most healing things I've ever learned, but that's kind of born out of that rock bottom resilience. I know, Natasha, just watching your life's work, your ability to help people heal out of a rock bottom situation is incredible. So that's why it's an honor for me to be on here with you today to share this with you, because you know how to help people heal, man. You're a healer.
Well, thank you. I didn't expect all that. So thank you. I love this self-grace thing. I think it's a very difficult concept. I think, again, we come from a culture where there's a lot of reward and punishment type of, kind of processing. And so I think we're very hard on ourselves, oftentimes the inner critic, all those kinds of ideas. And especially when you are really struggling, it can be very easy to come up with all the reasons being about yourself, right? And your failings, your shortcomings, etc. So I love that you bring this up, because I think this is just a really important aspect. And one of my things that I love to say all the time is yes, and I probably bug everybody by now because I say it so often, but yes, how do we take responsibility for the things where we maybe have fallen short or have hurt somebody or have, or are aware of our own weaknesses, because we all have them, and also stay in this space where we have compassion for ourselves, for others, and not expect that we're going to have everything figured out, which is, I think, what you're saying. And so that's a tricky thing, especially in a culture where I don't know that we get a lot of role modeling about that, and where we are often told, yeah, why haven't you performed in this way? Or why haven't you met this particular need? Or, why haven't you gotten, a certain level of income or education or whatever those things are? We're not good at systemic blame. I'm a big fan of systemic blame. I think our systems, we all come from somewhere, and wherever we come from, those spaces are broken too, right? In some way or another. We don't come from perfect systems. I think when we can share the responsibility, we do a little bit better. It's not just me, it's where I come from. It's the cultural messages. It's, it's the water.
We only know what we know. We only know what we know.
Right. So I love that you mentioned that. Okay. So moving on then, relational resilience. Yeah. Let me just set you loose on that one.
Yeah. As I go around the country and I speak about, relational resilience, that, we go through the motions, we don't give up because of that interconnectedness, that love, that connection. People always will raise their hand and say, all right, Christian, how do I have relational resilience with people who have different belief systems than me, different political views? We just see the world through two different lenses. They're going this way and I'm going this way. And man, for a long, long time, that was the hardest question I got, to really try to answer that. And be honest, I would say, well, the only thing you can do is agree to disagree or something like that. That was my answer. Just try to agree to disagree. And I don't know about you, Natasha, every time someone has said to me, let's you and me agree to disagree, I'm walking away thinking to myself, one, they didn't really get me. They didn't hear what I had to say. And I maybe vice versa. I didn't hear what they were really saying. I couldn't agree with anything they were saying. So the most important thing was just to agree to disagree. Usually both parties will walk away with a little bit of hurt inside. They don't feel like they were hurt. So I was wondering, man, could we get past this mentality of agreeing to disagree? And so this is what I've been working on the last 6 months or so is how do we do that? And And we've kind of identified three important things that we have to do that. First of all, the first thing, if you can almost visualize two hearts, one heart is made of stone and one heart is really soft. It's a pliable heart. And the bottom of that heart, as it comes down, there's the word, love. And in the world of resilience, if we're trying to help someone bounce back, we know there's two types of love. We have conditional love and we have unconditional love. Conditional love is I'll love you if ... I'll love you if you're Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you vote for Trump or you vote for Biden or whatever the situation is. I'll love you if you have my views, my beliefs, you see my God, you see my world. I'll love you. As a business owner, I have to be conditional sometimes. If my employees don't do A, B, or C, it's conditional, man. I might have to let them go, right? It's a conditional relationship. But here's the thing. If I'm trying to help a human being bounce back, we know human beings are much more likely to be resilient and bounce back in an unconditional environment, that they know they have value and worth, whether they succeed, whether they fail, they have value and worth because they're breathing in oxygen. They're a human being. As a therapist, I've worked in over 200 prisons across the country, and I've worked with every demographic. Even my fellow therapists will say, hey, why would you work with this person? Do you realize the crime they committed or whatever? Look, I condemn the crime. I'm always 100% against what someone does to hurt someone, but I believe in humans. I'm going to try to figure out, how do I help that human being heal? Does it make sense? They're on earth breathing in oxygen. I want to be unconditional with them. I'll let the universe, whatever, can judge them. Look, I'm not judging anybody. I'm just going to say, hey, the person in front of me, they have this, they need everything I need. They need to be heard. They have wants. They need to feel free. They need to feel support. They need access to water, food, shelter, all these basic things. And so we know a human being can bounce back much easier in an unconditional situation. If I said to you, who are the three people you most like being around, it's usually going to be someone who knows your strengths and they know your weaknesses, but they treat you the same. My wife, Wendy, trust me, has been more than unconditional with me. Mama Jackson would always say to me, when you're on death row, the only person that's going to visit you on death row, Christian, is me. And I knew she was serious. Now, I haven't made it to death row yet, but she knew, I knew in my heart, Mama Jackson was showing up if I ever ended up in prison on death row. And that's probably what kept me out of prison, is that level of unconditional connection with her. So again, if we want to control someone, we want to dominate someone, we want to influence them, create a conditional relationship. If you want to free somebody, create an unconditional relationship. And so as it relates to resilience, bouncing back, it's so important that it's unconditional. The other thing I've challenged people to do is write down all the relationships in your life that are conditional and unconditional. And I promise you, if the balance is, if it's way more conditional relationships, your anxiety is going to be higher. Depression is going to be higher. Fear is going to be higher if most of your relationships are conditional. If you can flip that and most of your relationships are unconditional. So I spent half of my life in both of these worlds. I spent half of my life with most of my relationships conditional. And I've spent half my life in the last, let me tell you, 50 on, but for about 42 years of age and older, I made sure that most of the relationships in my life are unconditional, and my happiness went way up. Anxiety went down. Fear went down. Almost every day is more enjoyable when you have more. So I get literally hundreds of emails from people, letters that have done this. Just, you want to get the fastest place to happiness, have more relationships that are unconditional. I know Natasha here, man, if I was in trouble, if I made a mistake, Natasha, she would at least talk to me. Does that make sense? If I messed up, she ain't going nowhere. And it's cool to have those type of relationships in your life. Because again, a lot of my life, I didn't have that. The second place so we're going to the kind of the top of that heart. The second thing we have to tap into to have relationships with people with opposite views than us is we have to literally be okay with being wrong. I read a book that blew me out of the water. Catherine Schultz wrote this book, is entitled just On Being Wrong. And my head exploded when I read this book. I encourage all the listeners, please read this book. What hit me was, I come from generations, particularly men, they could not be wrong. And I'm probably the first generation in probably 200 years that told my boys that their dad is probably more wrong than right. So Cooper and Carson, my two kids, when they ask me a question on pretty much any subject matter, I'll give them 2 or 3 different perspectives on it. I'll give them my view and I'll say, but I want you to know this is there right now. All this politics is going on, all this debate in America. Who's right? What do we do about all these issues? And I give my kids both perspectives, man. I want them to understand both perspectives, but even a third or a fourth perspective, and even their dad's perspective. It's like looking at a tree. I would never want my kids to look at just one view of that tree. I want my kids to walk to the right of the tree, and maybe on the right of the tree, they see a bird's nest. They keep walking, they see a broken branch, because they get go around the entire tree. They have three or more perspectives, because usually one perspective is not going to do it. Two perspectives is not going to do it. Three perspectives, you might be starting to get about. At 50 years old, I'm realizing even if I have three different views on one subject matter, I'm probably wrong. I probably got to go into the range of 4 or 5 views on any topic to really understand what's going on. And if you only see something from one perspective, I promise you have a blind spot. There's no question about that. That debate is over. If we see things from one view, you have a massive blind spot. And you guys, I spent, again, probably 45 years of my life looking at any issue from a one view perspective. And I cannot tell you how powerful it is to be able to one, be okay with being wrong. And the beautiful thing about being wrong is you can pivot faster. I love being around people that can be wrong, because we can problem solve on things. We can expand our minds. We can expand our visions. But the minute I'm with someone that's thinking black and white, it's this way or the highway, one, I usually can't get close to them. There's limits on even what I can have a conversation with them about. Everything's limited in a 1 or 2 perspective view. And I thought, even a couple of years ago, when I was in graduate school studying social work, and I started learning about paradigms and how we see things, to see things from 2 views would be spectacular. But I'm telling you, a 2-level view will still give you massive, massive blind spots. And so the first thing we have to do is be unconditional to get along with other people. And then I need to go to school on their view. They need to go to school on my view. And you don't do that. There's no reason for me to understand your view if I know I'm right. So there's zero reason for me to do research or to understand that other perspective. So also under this being wrong is we have to seek understanding over agreement. We have to do the hard work to understand the other perspective. This is what I try to make my kids do. I go, and they're like, well, Dad, you know it's right. We know that's your real view. And I go, okay, that might be my view. It doesn't mean it's right. It's just my perspective with all that I've been able to study with it. But that's how you go from agreeing to disagree, is you have to seek understanding over agreement. We have to seek love, has to transcend belief, going back to unconditional love. So we have to have that unconditional love, and then we have to be able to be wrong. And then the third perspective is seeing things from 3 or more different perspectives. I've already alluded to that's that other part of the heart. Now, the opposite of this is, of those 3 things, is, conditional love would be the stone heart, if we're going metaphorically speaking, my way or the highway. I'm right, you're wrong. Then you just have that one perspective, and then you see things, you can't be wrong, and then you see things from one view. And those are the 3 things that when I'm having conflict with someone, I ask myself, am I approaching them in an unconditional way? Do I see myself 100% right and them 100% wrong? We're not going to have a relationship. And then I got to fight intellectual narcissism. There's a form of intellectual narcissism when I'm never wrong. It's everything on that. I was an intellectual narcissist over half my life. So I promise you, there's no one who's a bigger hypocrite than me talking about these 3 things. I mean, it took me till I was 50 years old to realize I've got to see things from 3 or more different perspectives. Otherwise,
we are again. So you've got unconditional love.
Unconditional love. It's okay to be wrong.
Be wrong. What was the third one?
And to see things from 3 or more different perspectives. Yeah.
I was combining those 2, the last ones together.
And I have one more we just recently added. I wasn't going to go into, but you got me fired up. I just want to share it because it's you, Natasha. And that is the African American community. I've been talking to lots of African American leaders on the phone. I was just on the phone the other day with Dr. Virgil Wood, who's one of Martin Luther King's good friends, very close friend of Dr. King. And I was talking to him, and Miranda Beard, one of the first African American women leaders of the National School Board, and they're saying, hey, Christian, listen, you got to figure out, you can intellectually talk about this stuff, but you got to figure out where the change of heart comes from. What causes someone when they're having a political difference. They may feel maybe more superior because their skin color or whatever the issue is that we're dealing with. They said, Christian, why don't you stop and think about what causes a change of heart? And we're pretty early working on this, but this is what we have figured out. We're kind of excited about this is you cannot hate someone. I was talking to a gentleman who, let's just say, has some white supremacy tendencies. And I said to him, has anybody in the African-American community ever met all of your emotional and physical needs? And he said, no. And I said to him, listen, if someone meets all your emotional and physical needs, you could not hate them. See, that's the change of heart. The minute someone else is meeting all your emotional and physical needs, for example, if I'm raised by African-American parents, which I spent time being raised, I'm a white kid raised by African-American parents, part of my life. It's one of the reasons I'm a huge advocate in the African-American community because of that experience. If I didn't have that experience, maybe that's not who I am. But because, Mama Jackson met all my emotional and physical needs, I'm going to be an ally. If I was raised by two fathers, I would be a tremendous ally in the LGBTQ community because I understand it's exposure. Almost to everything we experience, it comes down to exposure. And we cannot hate. So whatever you hate, go live with it, spend time with it. And I promise you, once those emotional and physical needs are being met, because we can look across all of society, whether it's if your religion meets all your physical and emotional needs, you're going to stand up for that faith till the cows come home. If your country meets all your physical and emotional needs, you can defend your country. Whatever meets. What hit me, the reason why this hit me, I was literally thinking about this, and my dog Bandit jumped into my lap. And this dog's licking me, hugging me, going crazy. I'm like, wait a minute. This dog, if I asked myself, if I stop meeting this dog's emotional and physical needs, would it be licking me on the face, hugging me, going crazy every time I come home? It's because we cannot hate what meets our emotional and physical needs. So what we're excited about is just getting that message out to more people. And before when we're hating on something, if I'm not liking Biden voters, I could say to myself, man, are any Biden voters meeting my emotional and physical needs? Is a Trump voter meeting my emotion? As funny as that sounds, but I promise you, I would guess that most of the people who are voting for Biden or Trump, they're hanging out with people who all their emotional and physical needs are being met in that world and that viewpoint and that mentality. And so it's easy for me to cast my vote either way, depending on where those needs are being met emotionally and physically. And you could argue intellectually, maybe in politics more. But, me and Wendy have been married for 27 years because we continue to meet each other's emotional and physical needs. The minute me and Wendy do not meet each other's emotional, physical, intellectual needs, we will likely not stay married. I mean, that's just the way this world works. And so it's the awareness of that I think we can make huge progress in those areas. So those are kind of the 4 places that we have to go from just agreeing to disagree. We have to have unconditional love. We've got to be able to be okay with being wrong. We have to be able to see things from 3 or 4 different perspectives. And then we need to be able to, ask ourselves this question: am I hating on something because it's not meeting those needs? And usually what we love is what's meeting those needs. And I think we can stop a lot of hate in this world if we just have that awareness. All right, I'll be quiet. Sorry. I'll get fired up.
That. I mean, other ways maybe that I would have thought about that is, you can't always, well, this may not be totally true, but you can't hate what you know. In other words, if I know somebody, if I'm in relationship with somebody, and if they don't agree with me or all those things, because I've got plenty of, family and extended family who have different political views, who have different religious views. I have friends, in that position. And in my profession, even, I get to meet people with lots of different views, that come into my office. And yet, and when I'm able to attach with them at some level, some attachment, some level of, human connection, not that all that magically goes away, not that my concerns go away, or even some of my...
You know why they're wearing those shoes. You know why they're walking with that perspective. You get why they maybe cast that vote, or they didn't cast that vote. Not that you agree, but you understand. And that's
Right.
And empathy for where they're coming from. You don't have to agree with them, but we have to start seeking understanding over agreement. We live in a world that we value agreement more than anything, and we got to stop that. Yeah.
And I do a lot of mixed faith marriage work, right, with people where, these days there's a lot of people leaving organized religion, and that leaves a lot of marriages kind of in this space where, like, well, wait a minute, when we got married, we were both Catholic, right? Or we were both Jewish, and now halfway through our life, one of you is kind of changing a direction that the other one didn't expect. And so that's hitting close to home, where they're having to deal with these disagreements as you're talking about. And so one thing that I kind of start out all of my work with that on, which I think kind of goes with what you're saying, is that intimacy isn't sameness. Like, I think the goal that we think we want is to be the same with somebody. And I do think that that's where we originally connect with people, is with something similar, right? Like when you think about dating somebody, it's like, you want to go get pizza? Well, yeah, if I like pizza and you like pizza, we're the same on that. I feel a little bit of connection with you, right? And if all of a sudden you have an idea and I agree with it, oh, wow, and then by the fifth idea, it's like, we're meant to be, and I love you, and you get me. So we initially bond, usually in that sameness category where we are in agreement, right? And then of course you start rubbing into all the ways that you're different, and that's when you 10 years down the road are in marriage counseling, right? Because you're like, oh, you're not the same as me in a lot of ways, and you're starting to annoy the hell out of me.
We have to remember, as adults, we developmentally change as adults too, and we're not staying the same. So when people change political views or spiritual views or whatever, I also think we need to start honoring that we're not the same person at 50 years old that we were at 40 years old or 30 years old. And I think oftentimes when a spouse or someone wants to keep us in that box, when we're just going through natural progress, natural developmental stages of adulthood, that I think that's another thing that we really got to understand. And that's why it's important that both partners are doing both the work, man, that they're both on their journeys, that we respect each other's journeys to not stay the same.
Yeah.
And
exactly. That's exactly. And so again, it goes back to realistic expectations. I think sometimes we haven't been given great messages about what to expect from life, from marriage, from ourselves. Yes. I just wanted to say, I think that last point of yours, as far as changes of heart, really come from many ways of framing things that we haven't really been taught from the very beginning.
And I think empathy, you mentioned empathy as a huge one. Empathy and understanding, that people change. I mean, again, going back, and we talked about this a few minutes ago, but the most consistent thing in the human condition is change. Nothing stays stagnant. It doesn't stay. And you try to keep things the same or stagnant, it's going to catch up. And so it's what makes us the most resilient. Humans are the most resilient thing to ever walk this planet, because our ability to adapt is really our superpower.
Yeah.
You have, like, I just saw a statistic the other day, you have a 1 in 400,000 chance of being born when they consider war, famine, disease, all the things, the statistical odds of the egg and the sperm coming together is so statistically small. It's like when they consider, again, environmental issues, all the things, it's 1 in 400 trillion chance. So any human being you're around, they're a resilient machine. I mean, I know we're more than machines, but they're highly, highly resilient. So I want everybody out there listening to really understand you're highly, highly resilient. And if you want to increase your resilience, especially in relationships, is put as much flexibility as you can into those relationships. And that's the other superpower, is flexibility with change, because your partner's going to be changing. And if you're with anybody over, even 3 to 5 years, I mean, every 5 years, I keep changing. I'm hoping I'm not the same Christian Moore 5 years from now. Hopefully by then I will have got all my dental health. But I'm getting therapy for it, Natasha. Don't be laughing. Okay. But what I'm saying is, I don't want to be the same person 5 years from now. I don't want to feel guilty if I have 2 water heaters, whatever. What I'm saying is, these things from my childhood that have haunted me my whole life, and that we are haunted by, we got to let our spouse, and you should be proud if you're in a relationship and your spouse feels autonomy or the your partner feels autonomy to make changes, you should be proud of that. You create a safe space for them to learn, to grow, to change. That should be a beautiful thing, not a bad thing. And so keep that in mind. That flexibility is so, so important because, that's that in resilience is flexibility. The more rigid you are, the less anything lasts. I mean, we see more things break down in wintertime because of that rigidity. Winter cold creates rigidity. So more rigid things they just don't last. And the more we are rigid in how we perceive this world, how we perceive other people, how we view cultures, politics, faith, all these things, we got to create flexibility as much as we can.
I love that. And you've shared some vulnerabilities. I'll be vulnerable too. I'm currently going through a divorce, and a lot of what you said about, again, that's something that in our language, in our culture, how do we talk about divorce? It's like a failed marriage, right? And so again, it's from that perspective of a failure, something incorrect. And one thing that my husband and I have been really working on is kind of this idea of like really honoring the fact that we spent a lot of time growing up together, right? We spent a lot of time creating a family.
Absolutely.
We're doing our best, even though it's hard at times because, prickly feelings, I'm sure, get in the way for both of us, but, we're trying our best to stay amicable through this process. And so instead of seeing it as a failure that we now have to recover from, can we see it as a shift and a change and a direction where we can still, love each other, support each other, especially our kids through this transition. And I see we're not the only ones doing this, right? This is kind of like a new, I didn't get these ideas out of nowhere. I got these ideas because there are other people that have come before me. I give a lot of credit to Constance Ahrens with The Good Divorce and her research around, what's really harmful to the kids. Is it divorce or is it like the shitty conflict,
exactly.
Right? So, which was probably already hurting the kids in the shitty marriage, right? And so it's like, so when we reframe these things, we can kind of gather these ingredients of resilience that you're offering us and give us very different perspective that I think is very meaningful. If I choose the story that I'm a failure, versus if I choose the story that, my husband and I are unique individuals with strengths and weaknesses, and we're shifting in a way that, is sad and yet good. It's a mixture of things. Boy, life can look a lot differently within my own head and experience, depending on which path I go. And that's a challenge, especially when there's so much encouraging me to choose the story of sadness, failure, fear, broken dreams, all of that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, look at, I've met some of your kids. I mean, you have amazing kids, amazing family.
You have amazing kids.
Thank you. Absolutely. But what's so powerful is, I love what you're saying about you guys grew up together. So it's a beautiful thing. Instead of looking at that as something that needs to be greatly mourned, you went through this journey together. You both grew and changed through this journey. And now there's an opportunity for a rebirth. I have lots of friends that have been through divorces and, they're on the back end. Whether they've remarried or they have just different type of relationships, different things. And my observation, and I've done lots of therapy over the years and counseling couples, is usually within a few years, they're in a much more powerful, empowered place. And that rebirth is beautiful, but it's like with anything, the, change and the real resilience takes place in the suffering. And that's the most difficult part of it, is what you're going through that. My mother-in-law just passed away a couple of weeks ago. My wife talked to her mom almost every single day of her life. And she's going through that tremendous pain, but we're looking at ways, like her birthday's coming up. We're looking at ways to kind of honor her mom on her birthday and do some different things. And so the ability to sit with that suffering, and I think it's important you feel it. I mean, a lot of my life with how I treat my anxiety is I spent years trying to just act like the anxiety is not there. Now I'll go sit on a couch, sit down, and I'll literally wallow in the anxiety. I'll wallow in the pain of a lost relationship, that has come and gone in my life. I just sit in it and I feel the pain of it. And then I'm able to move out of it faster and get to that rebirth place, or the metaphor of the caterpillar, whatever. I'm able to experience that but I got to be in that cocoon a little bit, feel it, and then I can heal faster from it. And again, of course, if you're while you're going, you're in that really painful thing, if you need to talk to someone, it's so important to get help, to talk to a mental health worker or someone during that. I know I've had to do that during those most painful moments of my life. But it's interesting. Me and a bunch of therapists last couple of years, we've had this debate. We can't find a situation where a human being cannot bounce back from it. And we're literally debating, we have this debate every time we meet. We're like, okay, did you come up with one that a human being can? And we look at what Viktor Frankl went through, the Holocaust, Helen Keller. I mean, just what I've seen kids overcome, even what we're dealing with this COVID. You see what human beings will come back from stuff. And that's why we're the most resilient thing that has ever walked this planet. Our ability to be resilient is unbelievable. Resilience really isn't about success. A homeless man who picks up bottles all day, sleeps under a bridge, picks up bottles the whole next day, and then does this week in and week out may be more resilient than you and me, Natasha, if we, abused our kids or we didn't put the effort into our careers or whatever. Resilience has nothing to do with success, really. I believe resilience is a much higher principle than success. And again, because success is fleeting. Success comes and goes. There's times in my life where, I'll think, oh, I'm successful now. And then I crash. I mean, a couple, when COVID hit, my company went from being worth a little bit to being worth negative nothing. Does that make sense? Overnight and stuff. I was like, holy cow. And so again, my whole experience with success is fleeting. My experience with resilience is it does not go away. And I think you and your husband, Natasha, on the back end of that relationship, as you transition over the next, couple months, couple years, I think both of you will be in a stronger, resilient position is what I've observed in my professional career. And I'm sorry you're going through that pain. That's some painful stuff, but just observing you the last years, you've been going through some of this. Man, I've been proud of how you haven't shut down. You put all these things I've been talking about, putting one foot in front of another. You're living this stuff. And that's why you're great at what you do. You're an amazing, amazing person.
Thanks, Christian. No, it is. And I really appreciate your thoughts about sitting in pain. I think we forget that. I mean, I say that all the time to people, and yet do I want to do it? Right. And so it's good to be reminded on a regular basis because again, both our wiring, I think our instinctual wiring is to avoid pain, right? So when you touch the burner, right, you want to, every nerve ending in your body is kind of wired to avoid pain. And then on top of it, we've got the survival mechanism, the fight, flight, freeze response that turns into nanoseconds, right? In nanoseconds, we can be in that space. And that's about avoiding pain and surviving. And I think resilience in a way, although I think resilience does show up in some of those instinctual spaces, but in another way, there's also some emotional intelligence that we kind of have to go beyond our instincts. We have to go beyond those instinctual things of trying to avoid pain all the time or only being in survival, mechanisms. And to really thrive, you have to really kind of get to a different space. It's more learned and more able to, and this is why we have this great brain, right? Where we can take ideas like Christian's been giving us so many great ideas, right? And so many different ways of looking at things. And those are called reframes. Yep. And take those reframes and you mess with them in your head a little bit, right? And you try them out and all of a sudden there's more possibility than there was before. And that's, I think, what's so beautiful about being human, right?
And I love that you just said that there's more possibilities because the fact now I can observe my anxiety, I have more possibilities to figure out how to solve it and how to walk with it. Now when it shows up, I see it as a friend and say, hey, all right. Like the other day I had to give a speech to like 1,200 people. I was scared to death. I was really nervous. The anxiety showed up. And so I sat with it for maybe 15 minutes. I was having a panic attack. I'm sweating, just on the verge of a panic attack. And then I started talking to it. I'm like, all right, Mr. Anxiety, you've been with me for 50 years. I got to go give that speech. So guess what? You're going to help me. We're walking together up on that stage. So I'm literally having a conversation with something that is giving me a panic attack. But now I'm embracing it as an enemy that I love. Does that make sense? Like it's my friend. And guess what happened? The anxiety was put in check. I was able to control the anxiety. Now, this is all I do. This is my day job. I study this. Anybody gets to do this. I'm in a position of privilege to be able to have the time, the energy to study, to be able to do this. I want to be really clear on that. I got 5 kids to take care of, and I got to go work, you know, in the area of not psychology. I'm not sitting around breaking this stuff down. So I want to be very clear on that position of privilege. But what I'm saying is the ability to observe it, the pain, and then figure out ways to walk with it. There's tremendous opportunity in that. And it's not something you do overnight. Just when your head hits the pillow at night, notice the first thing that comes in your mind that's painful. And then just ask yourself, how can I use this as my best friend? So we're looking at this as a model. The first thing you have to be resilient. You have to have suffering. The second thing you have to do is be able to tap into both your positive, negative emotions. And then you got to be able to tap into those 4 sources of resilience: your relational resilience, your street resilience, resource, and rock bottom. And that's the goal.
I love it. So you've done excellent. This is one of those podcasts where I'm sorry that my doggy is barking in the background, but I think that it would be useful to listen to 2 or 3 times. I think you'll hear different things, different times. But tell me, what am I not asking that you'd still like to make? Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you feel like you'd still like to say?
Yeah. The only other thing that I think I would like to say is that resilience takes place in the striving. It's not a destination. Like, even though I've written a book on resilience, I lecture on resilience all across the country. Now, this might really throw you. I've never mastered resilience, okay? And I fail more than I succeed with resilience. I want to be really clear on that. So resilience takes place in the effort effect. I've never reached total resilience, but the resilience shows up in the striving. And that's just, I want the listener to really understand that. It's not a destination. It's when you got out of bed today and you felt lonely or depressed and you showed up to work, that's resilience. When you're agitated with your kids, but you sat there patiently with them and talked it out with them, that's resilience. When your dog was barking and you're in the middle of a podcast and you just get up, you pick the dog up, you still have a smile on your face, you're not freaking out, you're just doing the best with the reality. All we can do is adapt. I mean, what you just did there was adaptation, but it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. This podcast isn't going to be perfect. I mess up all the time. And I just think we have to give ourselves that grace when we're not perfect, when we mess up. And resilience has nothing to do with being perfect. And you got to start, like, I've been trying to walk for this past year, and like, I'll walk 3 days and I'll get lazy. I won't walk for a couple days. But I've already committed that I'm going to restart over and over and over exercising, because otherwise I'll go a whole year and not exercise. If I don't already, I've already predetermined, if I miss a day of exercise, I'm going to keep it going. And I think that's what we have to do, is just give ourselves that forgiveness when we don't mess up and already have predetermined to continue to strive. And resilience takes place in the striving, not the destination. That's the last thing.
Love that. I love that so much. And so does Lola here.
Oh my word. That's an incredible dog. Wow. Cute.
She's protecting my territory. But what I really love about that is that just what you just said is it takes everything from failure to an ongoing journey. Because even like diets, right? Like, how many diets have I started, or how many times am I trying to be more nutritionally healthy or exercise or whatever? Yeah. If every time you mess up, which you're going to do all the time, it's deemed a failure, that's going to be a different story than what you just said, which is just, it's an ongoing.
And it's to be human. It's what makes you special, is that you don't stick to something, that you're not perfect all the time. Give yourself that grace, start over. If I don't give myself that grace, I don't have any desire to start over. So, I mean, today I'm going to try to get my exercise. Yesterday, I didn't get my exercise in because I was speaking all day yesterday. I was exhausted at the end of the day, and I didn't exercise. I was so mad at myself because I was committed to doing it yesterday. I didn't do it, but I'm going to do it today. So I got my exercise shirt on right now. As soon as I'm done this podcast, I'm going to go out and I'm going to exercise. And then if tomorrow I don't, I'm not going to beat myself up, because I know I'm doing the best I can with the reality of the war I'm fighting between my ears. We're all fighting this war. And we all have to give each other grace, and we have to be okay with being wrong. Because if you can't be wrong, there's no reason to listen to anyone. There's no reason to change your views, your perspectives. We got to give ourselves grace when we're wrong. And we have to be able to do that with other people too, because the human condition, again, is to mess up, but we're also the most resilient people on the planet. And I know we got to end this here real quick too, Natasha, but I got to get you on my podcast as well. So I'm going to get you on it.
Hey, yes. So I want you to tell us all the things that you do. So you've got the Resilience Breakthrough book, right?
Yeah, you got the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. Yeah. And then we have the podcast, the Resilience Breakthrough podcast. We have some incredible guests on there. We had Aaron Gurel from Freedom Riders on there, Daryl Scott from Rachel's Challenge, whose daughter was killed in Columbine, but this guy does amazing work now. He's reaching millions of kids across this country. Just incredible guests. And so if you're interested in the subject matter of resilience, please check out the Resilience Breakthrough podcast. Also, we have a free parenting guide right now during COVID that teaches how to have resilience within your family. If you just go to whytry, whytry.org, on the homepage, you can get our free parenting guide. And we've had now almost 70,000 families have downloaded this free parenting guide on resilience. So all this stuff I've talked about, how you can do it with your kids, how you can do it in your home, and it's completely free. And it took us years. It took us 4 years to develop that. So I promise you that's a good deal. We just decided, hey, during COVID and what's going on, that's our way of giving back to this great country, to our community. So please check that out. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be on here. It was a lot of fun. And I just want your listeners to know, I mean, a lot of people interview me about resilience. I do interviews all the time about this. And you're someone who has really lived it. A lot of times the person interviewing me, I don't know them as much personally, but just observing what you've been through the last year, man, if someone's going through something difficult, your ability to help is incredible because you're one of the people that really understands this topic of resilience. And so it was an honor to talk to you about it.
Thank you, Christian. And I'm going to link to all of that. And I too think that you're an excellent example of resilience. And I have so much respect for the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for your time today. I'll commit to doing a walk today. And you and I and your wife need to set up a dinner date.
I know we talked about that a while ago. We need to. It's just, again, we could, but see, I want to talk about it. I want to role model this for the audience. It's interesting. At 50 years old, pretty much all the friends I still have in my life, when I let them down, like, Natasha is a workaholic like me. We work. We want to take all the stuff we've learned in our work and share it with the world. And so it's easy for us to go two different directions. But here's the beautiful thing. I have probably, 10, 12 friends in my life. Even if I'm not there for them or they're not there for me, it's unconditional. They will show up. They'll be there. They're like family, even if we can't connect all the time, because it's not maliciousness, it's just life. Life is complex. And I really encourage the listener out there to create relationships, have relationships in your life where if you're not perfect, if you don't meet their needs perfectly in that moment, then they're gone. Those are not long-term relationships anyhow. And so, and they're not that's probably not the safest place for you long-term, but it's taken me again, almost 50 years to have those type of relationships. I want to encourage people out there and what you do is in the beginning relationship, you just say to them, hey, I'm going to let you down. You're going to let me down, but we're going to be there for each other. And I love those relationships, man. And so I really encourage people to look on how to create those type of relationships. I need to do more work on that or put it in one of my next books. But anyways, man, we got to create some connection in this world. We got to have more unity. And I love what you're doing to make that happen.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you so much for your time. I love what you're doing too. And we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Hey, you guys, you're the best. You're the best. Talk soon. All right, bye-bye.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. Now so we can always go to the homeland of the heart. Of our human history etched on her canyon walls, wide earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. Något ich geschrieben alone. So we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart. Deep in our cities, we sleep without her stars, yet still her presence sustains us from afar. Some places should be left alone. Något ich geschrieben alone. So we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland